Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and welcome to our Westchester Weekly Update every Monday at 2 o'clock. We plan to continue the process of giving you an update on some of the issues that are important to you here in Westchester County. And we welcome your dialogue after the program is over, not only on Facebook as comments, but in contacting us directly at 995-2900, or you can contact me directly at glatimer@westchestergov.com. In this update, in which I'll be joined by Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, as I always am in these programs, we're also going to have the benefit of having with us the town supervisor of the town of Bedford, Ellen Calvis, and I'll introduce her in a second, and she'll be able to talk a little bit about what's happening in that town. As you know, at every one of these updates, we try to ask one of our elected municipal partners or statewide officials to join us as part of the update and get a better picture of the mosaic of Westchester County. So in our program today, we're going to talk right at the top about our efforts to cut the county property tax. We also then again will hear from Supervisor Calvez. Then we'll talk about COVID-19, give a brief update as to where we are as of today in terms of the pandemic, which we hope can soon be classified as an endemic. And then we'll also talk about affordable housing. We'll have a few other little updates in there along the way, and we'll take any questions from the press that may be there. I wanted to start out today by just reminding everybody that when we closed the 2022 budget for Westchester County, we cut the total county property tax levy by $7 million. The proposed budget from the county executive branch to the Board of Legislators, they adopted the budget, they made certain changes to it that were improved the budget, and in the final analysis, we dropped the county property tax levy, which is the aggregate amount of property taxes from residential and commercial sources countywide that go into funding the county budget. We also have sales tax revenue, other revenues that go into this, and reimbursements from the state and federal governments, all on the revenue side, and then the expenditures across the board of all of our various operating departments. In putting that budget together and closing it, we had to establish from the tax levy tax rates for each of the 25 municipalities, the 6 cities, and the 19 towns that comprise Westchester County. If you live in a village, you are part of the town, and that town's rate is the level that you would pay as a resident of the village, or if you're a resident of the town outside of the village, and that happens in some of our towns. Some of our towns, like Bedford, that we'll talk to in a couple of minutes, do not have incorporated villages within them. So this is all the way New York State has structured local governments, very different from other communities, but we deal within the system we're in, and we try to make as much progress as we can. What's important to note as you look for your bills, you're going to be seeing in many communities at the end of February, or you may have seen it at the 1st of February, either a town or a city tax bill. And that town or city property tax bill generally is the smallest portion of the 3 component parts that make up your total property taxes. If somebody asks you what you pay in property taxes, you tell them $20,000, you somewhere in the vicinity of $13,000 to $14,000 of that $20,000 bill is paid to your local school district. The remaining portion, the remaining 1/3 portion, $600 to $6,500 of that $20,000 imaginary tax bill, is paid for to a combination of your municipal government, your town and village, or your city, and the other portion to the county. County portion of your tax is a little higher than your municipal taxes, but the whole piece together is about 1/3. So when we talk about lowering your county property tax bill, that is approximately about 1/6, a little more than that, of the total taxes you pay. It is the portion that those of us who are elected county officials have some control over. And then, of course, what happens on the town level, the city level, the village level, are your elected officials at that level, and the school districts, which are the heaviest portion of your tax bill, are controlled in all but one case by separately elected local school districts. The one exception is the city of Yonkers, where, as one of the big 5 cities in New York State, it is the local city government that manages schools. That's true in New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Yonkers as well. But for most of you that are watching, when we talk about cutting your county property tax bill, that is an important element in your overall tax bill. And we hope that we're showing now in the 3rd straight year by cutting property tax levy that you see some benefit in your wallet when you pay your taxes. For those of you who are still paying your a mortgage payment that will also cover your taxes and other elements of how you financed your house, you may not feel the benefit of it. Generally, a mortgage company will just adjust the amount that you pay every month based on a host of factors, mostly how much you owe on your on the note that you have to buy your house at the original sales cost of it. But taxes, since they come out of it, if taxes drop at some level, that is part of a downward adjustment, and depending on how deep you are into your paying off of your mortgage, you may see a benefit. If you pay your taxes directly because you do not have a mortgage on your house, then you will get a statement at the end of each year from your local government that will outline that, generally for your federal and state tax benefit. And what you will see over the last couple of years, and now in the budget year that will affect your taxes this year, you will see a decrease in county property taxes. It differs from town to town, from city to city, based on two factors. What happens to the assessment roll in a given community? Does it expand or contract? Does it contract in the commercial side of it or expand in the commercial side of it? Does it expand or contract on the residential side of it? And then the second thing is an equalization rate that's established by the state of New York to try to bring into some balance the differing values of properties in different communities. If you own a home in the north side of Mount Vernon, bordering Bronxville, or you have a home in Bronxville on the other side of that dotted line, those two municipalities assess property very differently. They have a different standard for how much a house is of a certain value. If you drive on Central Parkway from Mount Vernon and you cross the border into Bronxville, the houses look pretty much the same to you, but they're being assessed by different people and at a different level of assessment. So to harmonize that, there's a state equalization process that occurs, and it occurs after we establish what the total tax levy is, so that each community will determine how much from year to year that community will contribute to reach the total county property tax levy. If I've confused you, it's because it is a confusing process. We try to make it as simple as possible. What does it mean to you? What it means to you is how much your county property tax bill went down. And we have a wide range of results from community A to community B. When your county tax bill comes in, oftentimes it's in the month of May, might be structured differently depending on where you live, you should see a reduction in your county property tax bill in nearly every single community of Westchester County. The size of that reduction will differ based on those two factors. But the important thing is to understand what our sensitivity is, what this administration and the Board of Legislators' sensitivity is. We know that people have a high property tax burden here in Westchester County. We have a high quality of living. We provide certain services that represent top-of-the-line services, and people who live here or move to here expect those levels of services. But they'd like to see their tax burden reduced without touching the level of services. So it requires us as a county government to be creative in the way we go about doing our business. And we've done that. Over the course of the last 4+ years now, we've been able to negotiate contracts for basic services like our arrangements with Liberty Line's bus system, or with the Wheelabrator company that operates our energy plant in Charles Point, where we dispose of our waste. We've been able to negotiate contracts for the current period of time that is less expensive than over the past period of time. We've saved $20 million over 5 years on a Liberty Lines contract. We saved $17 million over 10 years on a Wheelabrator contract. We found ways to find non-tax level revenue. We receive revenue right now in a pilot arrangement with Airbnb that compensates for what otherwise would be taxes on occupancy. And we found a way to develop revenue from a company called New Energen that works with us on energy demand reduction during peak seasons of energy draw, which we as the county government use less energy. And when we use less energy in those periods of time, then the Con Edisons and the NYSEGs of the world don't have to buy energy at a premium, and we get a financial rebate, in essence, a revenue stream to help us balance our budget. I've only given you 4 examples of it. There are other examples. We saved somewhere north of $6 million by having a voluntary employee reduction program where employees were given an option to voluntarily separate, compensated for that. They made the decision to do so. We reduced the size of our workforce and saved $6 million or more as an economic savings. So with all of those decisions, we were able to cut the county property tax levy and now that reflects itself in a percentage cut to you, of different sizes for different communities, some of them as small as 1% cut. Greenberg Town has a 1% reduction in taxes. That's the third straight year that's 1%. It's a small percentage, but the steady direction is better even than freezing your property taxes. And much was made in the prior administration about never raising your taxes. This is 3 years of cutting your taxes. In some communities, the significant number of tax cuts. In the very small town of Pound Ridge, there's been 3 straight years of significant cuts, as well as in urban settings and suburban settings. So all of those numbers are out there in the body politic. The basic mission is to understand, as you get ready to see your county tax bills when they arrive, there should be a reduction in your county property taxes. It should represent a continuation of multiple years of cuts, dramatic enough if it stands as an alternative to raising taxes, which is the general narrative. So much of what people think occurs comes from not necessarily knowing specific facts. And we will talk about that a little bit later in the program when we talk about crime. The perception of things is not always the reality of things. And sometimes in this world, we have to fight to make people break through what they think is true to see what is actually true. But whatever the concerns are about property taxes in this county, the county government, which levies, again, in that vicinity of 20% of your total tax bill, has cut its need for property taxes in 3 consecutive years, and you will see some benefit of that when you see your county property tax bills a little bit later this year. So that was the first bullet point we wanted to mention, make sure everybody understand budget's over and done with, but the tax levy impact is yet to be seen, and hopefully positively. Now with that, we're going to invite the new town supervisor of the town of Bedford to join us here. Ellen Calves has served previously 2 years on a term as a town councilwoman, and in the last year, in 2021, was elected town supervisor. As she takes over the board now in her second month of operation, she leads a 5-member board, herself and 4 members of the town council, and she'll talk about that. And they handle the town that's in the vicinity of about 20,000 people. She'll have the specific number. If you live in Bedford within the town, you'll know that there are 3 prominent hamlets within the town: Bedford Village, Bedford Hills, and Katona. Now, some of what we know of as Katona actually falls over the dotted line outside of the town of Bedford. This is what the Marquis de Sade has structured when the zip code system overlaid the municipal government system in the 60s and didn't respect the municipal borders. So post offices cross over all kinds of dotted lines, and it makes it very confusing. But her leadership in this town is important, and each of the different municipal officials, we've had Mayor Roach from White Plains join us, Mayor Bramson from New Rochelle, Mayor Levin from Ossining Village. We're very happy to have her here to talk about whatever is pertinent in Bedford, and we look forward to having some of her colleagues in weeks to come. But for today's purposes, Ellen Calves, the town supervisor of the town of Bedford. Madam Supervisor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, County Executive, for inviting me here today to give a municipal update. After 6 weeks as Bedford Town Supervisor, I feel so lucky to be among such great people in a great place with great support and commitment to issues to move us forward. I've had tremendous support and help from folks at the county, George Latimer and Ken Jenkins and their staff, as well as our representatives at the county and state level. Every day I love working with our town staff, our departments, who've helped ease my transition into being supervisor. We have such a friendly, helpful, hardworking town, employees and staff. I'm so proud to be part of that team. During the recent COVID-19 Omicron surge, I'm grateful again to our town employees, our first responders, our essential workers, teachers, and government officials who's helped us get over the recent hump and hopefully onward to better days. We really appreciate the masks and the test kits that were provided by the county. Our residents used them up quickly and appreciated having those to keep themselves and others safe. I also appreciate Erica Pierce, our county legislator in Bedford and surrounding areas, is meeting with utilities tomorrow to really voice the concerns of our residents about the high costs of energy. So we really are happy to have that support from the county. We've had a lot of snow and ice in Bedford. Bedford is in the northern part of the county with only close to 18,000 residents, but we have 128 miles of roads that we maintain, and 33 of the miles of those are dirt roads. So we've had a lot of impact on our dirt roads this year with the snow, the freezing, the warming, the moisture. So lots of gravel, lots of work going on in Bedford for our roads. I'm proud and honored to be working with the most diverse town board Bedford has ever had. We have our first and youngest Hispanic member of the town board. We have our second African-American woman elected to the town board, the second woman elected as supervisor, the first Jewish woman on the town board, and Bedford elected our first female justice this year. So we have incredible diversity and vibrancy going on, and our community is very excited about moving forward in ways that we can promote vibrancy, inclusion, accessibility in government, and make sure that all voices are heard. In addition to working with great people, I work in a great town. As George said, we have 3 unique hamlets: Bedford Village, Bedford Hills, and Katona, all incredibly unique with opportunities to enjoy art, nature, history, and our unique places for shopping and dining and exploring our town. To support that economic vibrancy and community, we're working on infrastructure, getting grants, infrastructure like wastewater. We started a sewer project that took about 100 years to get going, and that's going to be expanded this year in Bedford Hills and Katona. We're working on potential wastewater solutions in Bedford Village, sidewalks, clean, healthy water, economic vibrancy, environmental sustainability, charging stations, parking, and other things that really support some progress and growth in our town. I have the great pleasure of working with my town board members. Stephanie McCain is the liaison to the police department, and she's leading forward our police reform efforts to help ensure that our police department is moving forward and letting the community know about what they're doing and engaging with community members around that, the suggestions in that report, and focused on a lot of our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We have a committee, the IDEA Committee, that focuses on that. Andres Castillo is committed to community health and is forming a committee to have a health fair in our town. Bobby Bitker is working as our liaison to the Finance Committee and keeps tabs on making sure that we're cutting costs wherever we can and looking for grants. And she's also driving forward our emergency management task force and committed to the committees on seniors and veterans and finding ways we can help those populations. And we have a new town board member, Tom Catoliano, who was on our planning board, so he'll be a great help as a liaison to our planning and also to our wireless facilities working group, which is going to be pushing forward to make sure that we have better coverage for our emergency services and also cell services throughout our town. And finally, I'm just thrilled that Bedford will continue our leadership on climate action. We just celebrated our achievements in the Clean Energy Communities Contest, receiving $130,000 in grant money from DEC to invest in further clean energy solutions. So we're continuing to electrify our vehicle fleet, electrify our buildings, planting trees, collecting food waste, restricting leaf blowers, hopefully soon, installing covered bike racks, removing invasive species, and becoming more resilient to extreme weather. We adopted the New York State Stretch Code last year, and I will be joining a panel at Sustainable Westchester on March 3rd with other town leaders who have adopted clean energy codes to share that with other municipalities. Climate change is a global sustainability and justice issue, and global climate change will impact us locally, most likely hurting those with the least resources the hardest. In Bedford, we have bold climate action goals, but we are seriously committed to making sure that marginalized communities are included in and benefit from the solutions that we implement in our town. To advance localized solutions, we're working with our conservation board and our local environmental group, Bedford 2030, to measure local pollution, working on a process to address air quality indoors and energy use in rental buildings, and promoting efficiency and health solutions and savings for everyone, especially people who will benefit the most from energy savings and cost-saving measures. Taking these steps is not only the right thing to do and earns us grant funding and incentives, and it helps New York State achieve its climate leadership goals, but we know these measures save our residents money, reduce local pollution, improve health, avoid waste, and set us up with climate-smart solutions to ensure that all our residents thrive in the future. I'm thrilled to be working on these issues and many important other initiatives in Bedford with so many awesome people in our town and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Ellen Calvis, who is the town supervisor of the town of Bedford. I had the pleasure prior to becoming county executive as a state senator of representing Bedford for 5 years. The state senate had a chance to be active in the community and attend a lot of the great community events that are there and the spirit of the people of that community. Ellen, we wish you much success, and you have partners here in White Plains to work with you on any of the initiatives that you have. So thank you very much for being with us. Safe travels as you go about the county. We'll see you again soon. Thank you. Thanks very much. So we're going to give an update on COVID, where we stand for the moment. And I want to highlight that we began this process of communication almost 2 full years ago as a response to the COVID outbreak. And we thought that it was helpful at one point in time to have a daily report when things were shut down and people needed to know where are we with this this pandemic and how are we faring. We ratcheted it back to a less frequent communication and then made it a little more frequent depending on what was happening, with the course of the infection. Now that we have a once-a-week communications format, and as the COVID numbers have receded back to levels that are much more manageable, we view this as a weekly update on county issues, of which COVID is one of them, but not the dominant issue for every conversation. COVID has been an octopus with tentacles that reach into every single corner of the things we want to do. We wanted to use the county center as a source of recreation and enjoyment. We have to use it as a vaccination center. We had Glen Island eliminated from our use also as a recreational facility because we needed it as a testing center. Every decision we made about recreation, whether we continued a program or discontinued a program in the short term, was based on whether or not we thought we would be advancing the COVID infection. So now we believe that with the stage they're at right now is a position where this is still a serious disease. It still needs to be treated with the seriousness it deserves. We've lost over 2,600 Westchester residents to this disease since the beginning of the pandemic, and that is a significant number of people who died with COVID as the primary responsibility. But we believe that we're doing the right thing to address those issues as part of all of the issues that we have responsibility for in the county government. And we do have multiple responsibilities in a host of other policy areas. So we want to address all of them on a level platform, give you the update on COVID, and you'll be aware of that. But to do that as one of a number of these policy issues, we talked about taxation up front, our municipal partnership, and then we'll talk in a few minutes about a major capital project that we have coming up, affordable housing, and then we'll just touch on where we're heading and updating you on the circumstances of crime. The most important announcement to make today in COVID is that Westchester County has removed our mask mandate that applied only within county office buildings and certain county facilities. So while we have masks available to us at any moment in time, it is now not a requirement when you walk into the county office building, either here in White Plains. There are other county offices building in White Plains as well, 85 Court Street, 112 East Post Road. We have operations, health clinic at 134 Court Street here in White Plains. The county center itself, although it's set aside for other purposes right now, at 100 East 1st Street in Mount Vernon, 20 South Broadway in Yonkers. There's a number of other places around the county where either county officers or officials work out of, or members of the public might come in to visit. The mask mandate now is consistent with what Governor Hochul has established. She's set parameters for the things where masks are still required. For our purposes, the Beeline bus system still falls in an area where masks are still required, and so you will still need to put a mask on when you go on a Westchester County bus. When you're outdoors, there's no mandate. There's a practical reality to things, and if you're outdoors and you're in some sort of close quarters with other people, you should consider whether or not your health safety is best protected with a mask, but that's a personal choice given where we are now with the pandemic. But we have also created a carve-out that relates to 4 departments of county government that are not under the direct control of the county executive. The county clerk's office, led by Tim Idoni, the district attorney's office, led by Mimi Roca, and the Westchester County Board of Legislators, now chaired by Catherine Borgia. Those are 3 departments of county government which have other elected officials as their chief operating officer. So should the Board of Legislators determine that there are some restrictions that they have people from the public coming into their operation, their chamber on a regular basis, how the county clerk and the district attorney determine that they want to operate their situations, you might see a slight difference if they so choose. There's a 4th department that's also given wide berth, and that is the County Board of Elections, because the Board of Elections actually reports directly to the State Board of Elections. The county executive and the executive branch does not have the direct control over them that we do in other departments. But with those 4 exceptions, they're relatively limited in terms of the overall structure of county government. Masks are not required, and that is because the governor has lifted the statewide mask requirement. It should be noted that the county put in a mask mandate for county office buildings only. We do not have the authority to reach out beyond that and do that. That authority belongs to the governor, and she used it at her period of time. But we actually preceded the governor in doing it when we saw the rise in cases in December. You may recall that we did a couple of different things. We proclaimed a state of emergency for COVID, which we now lift. We made all of our county boards and commission meetings go from in-person meetings to virtual meetings, WebEx, Zoom platforms, so that we would not create any potential for infection spread in that situation. We made some restrictions on capacity in our office elevators. These may seem like small bore situations, but this is the practical way that you go about implementing a mandate. And the important thing was about the mandate. It was not imposed because of ideology. We do not intend to control people's behavior. We intended to respond to the threat that came from the rise in Omicron cases. And it cannot be argued that the Omicron variant, when it came, expanded the number of cases dramatically, exponentially. We went from running 4,000 or 5,000 cases to 36,000 cases. That number now, updated most recent number, is just above 2,000 active cases in Westchester County, down from a peak slightly over a month ago of 36,000 active cases. So that shows progress, significant progress, from 36,000 active cases down to approximately 2,000 cases. And it's reinforced by our hospitalization numbers. At the same time that we were at peak infection, we were at 677 hospitalized individuals throughout the various hospitals of Westchester County. That number did not reach our maximum capacity number. We have approximately 2,700 hospital beds in Westchester County. So at 677, we were below the 1/3 mark. But at 677, we had a lot more people hospitalized for COVID than we had had at any point in time since the original outbreak in April and May of 2020. That number of 677 is now down to under 180 cases. That's a significant drop. And so it's indicators like that that inform our opinion, and we adjust to facts on the grounds. We're not ideologically committed to a strategy. We look and see if what we're doing is working, and we don't need to have the same restrictions, we can lift those restrictions. We understand that if we see a future strain that comes in, if it is virulent, if it causes a significant level of infection, or in some way causes a greater degree of sickness based on hospitalizations and fatalities, we reserve the right to take steps at that point in time. And that's when we issue an order for emergency authority, and that's when we issue whatever other mandates we are. But at this stage of the game, in terms of the mandate that we put in place inside county office buildings, our policies worked. There were no spread of cases of COVID inside those areas that we were concerned about, our workforce. And we knew that if we had a spread within our workforce, that could be devastating in terms of our ability to respond to our everyday duties in county government. So we imposed something in the early part of December. It served its purpose. It now is lifted as we are in the middle part of February. We hope we won't have to impose it. We look for the day when infection numbers are low enough that we can see them lifted on the Beeline bus system. And right now we are planning, as we head to the summertime season, to have the full range of recreational programs for the summer. And that includes the ethnic festivals that are a source of great joy and enjoyment for individuals, which we've had to eliminate in 2020 and in 2021, we are at this point looking to have them occur in 2022. We'll look at different protocols to determine if it's going to look exactly the way it has in the past, and some degree of social distancing perhaps will always be an appropriate way to go, but that's what we're heading to do. We expect to open our golf courses without any incident in the month of March, and then we expect others of our recreational facilities to come online. We expect no change in our schedule for household cleanup days run by Department of Environmental Facilities and the other outreach efforts of the county government. So all of that, we think, is the practical way, as we have tried to from the very beginning of this pandemic, to deal with this issue as practical-minded people, to look for those things that would reduce the potential of infection, reduce the severity of the infection, and reduce the number of Westchester neighbors who would die from this disease. And as it stands today, we've seen significant progress. That is good news. It is not perfect. We are not at the finish point. We were at a point where we think we can properly and justifiably eliminate the mask mandate, and the governor made the same decision. Now, for those who are looking to see what happens in our schools, the mandate on school masks comes from the governor. That is within her authority. That mandate still exists as of today. She may have made an announcement early today, may make an announcement later today or any time in the next week or two relative to that mandate. And we recognize that people don't necessarily know all the nuances of government. They will communicate with me or Ken or anybody at the county level saying, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. And we understand the lanes that we operate in, what our authority is and what our authority isn't. And in those cases where the governor has authority, or for that matter, in other cases where local governments have the authority, not us, we'll get a call every so often. Supervisor Calvis mentioned leaf blowers. Someone will call us and say, the county should have a plan to stop leaf blowing use of. We don't have that authority. That authority resides in the towns, villages, and cities. And that is a structure of what the state has allowed powers for different levels of government to operate. I have as much opportunity to deal with a leaf blower in your community as I do to deal with the situation in the Ukraine right now. And I don't say that lightly because we're in a very difficult situation over there. But I watch international affairs unfold the same way you do. I watch it on television. I listen to commenters who know more about foreign policy than I am exposed to. I don't have any inside information of what's happening there. I don't have any inside information of what's happening on a particular village board relative to leaf blowers, nor for that matter in the governor's executive chambers as relates to the mandates that are within her authority. Where we have advice to give to the governor, we provide it. But I think as we all understand, those of us who have unique authority would prefer to be able to make our announcements on our terms, and certainly I feel that way within the authority I've been given as county executive. I have stood before the electorate twice, and the electorate has determined that I have been granted certain authority for these 4-year period of time. It isn't attached to me, the human being, forever. It's during this period of time, and I intend to use that authority as wisely as I can, and I have in Ken Jenkins and Joan McDonald, and Emily Saltzman, and Andrew Ferris, and a host of other people, wise advisors around me that I can lean on for advice, and many times we will make the group decision rather than the individual decision. So I say all of that to let you know, if you go into the county office building, any of the county office facilities around the county, Ardsley, wherever we have them, you do not have to wear a mask walking in the front door. However, we encourage you to use common sense, and part of common sense is if you are immunocompromised, you may decide that continuing to wear the mask is in your interest. Keep in mind, when you wear the mask, it isn't an assurance that you won't get COVID. It is a reduction in the amount of virus load that you would project out, and then to some degree the amount of virus load that you might take in from somebody in your proximity. I said this the last time we spoke. There is a reason why in a mannered society we do not sneeze in each other's face. We know that what we expectorate from ourselves, if it has germs, might be the common cold, it might be anything. We do not want to give that straightforwardly to somebody else. So we turn our head, we cover our mouths, we sneeze at a distance to is not conveyed, or cough in the same way. That is the same principle by which you wear a mask. It does not protect you from the disease, absolutely. It reduces the likelihood of it. And when I hear people say masks don't work, that's baloney. Masks work for what they are intended to do, which is to reduce the viral load that goes to somebody or comes into somebody. And that's what it does. It reduces the viral load. It does not eliminate it. And I think if we're practical about what the role of masks are, we realize we've reached a point at which not having to wear a mask in certain contexts makes sense, and we try to go forward from there. Now, the major tasks of county government in terms of COVID have revolved most recently around testing and vaccinations. And the county has been aggressive in testing and vaccinating. We have not mandated anybody be vaccinated. We have not mandated that anybody be tested, but we've had a very high level of vaccination compliance in this county, greater than the surrounding counties from the Bronx to Rockland and Putnam and Orange and Dutchess and Ulster County. We have a higher response factor. Our strategies have worked. We've gotten more people vaccinated, and we've been able to deal with this testing demand, which was very high at the holiday season a month ago, has slacked off, or a little over a month ago, has slacked off now, but we're addressing it. I'm asking Ken Jenkins, our Deputy County Executive, to address testing and also vaccinations on COVID-19. Ken.
Thanks, George. And certainly to follow up with the county executive said, as far as Westchester County Center has been concerned, as far as the testing component, free testing continues to be available at the Westchester County Center in White Plains. And it has some caveats. First, it's PCR testing, but it's for symptomatic members of the community. So we are all familiar with the symptoms are right now, which sound like they might be a common cold or certain other things, body aches, etc. Or you've been exposed to someone with a known confirmed positive case. And that's a close contact, not somebody that you heard that has been a positive case that you might have seen in the hallway somewhere. It has very specific guidelines, 10 minutes or more, cumulative, so there could be 10 one-minute sessions or 10 minutes at one point in time, and that person is positive. That's the two individuals that are going to get tested. And the other component is that the CDC recommends strongly that for those folks that are not, that they get tested when they have contact with folks 5 to 7 days after an exposure. In Omicron, they suggested that might get down to 3 days, but overall the CDC has not moved away from the recommendation that says 5 to 7 days after an exposure. Otherwise, you might be testing too soon. Things that we have learned from 2020, as the county executive has pointed out. The testing opportunities are Monday and Tuesdays from 8 to 4, Wednesdays from 8 to noon, Thursdays from 8 to 2, and Friday from 8 to 12. You need to sign up. That is done with our testing partner at the county center. And again, those appointments are done 3 days in advance. As county executive pointed out, during the holiday season, there was a tremendous pressure on testing, and we did everything possible. And this was another opportunity through the county executive's leadership that we put out to make available for Westchester residents, again, specifically those that were displaying symptoms or were exposed to known positive cases. The county center continues also to be open for vaccinations for ages 5 and up. You have to make an appointment for that as well through the health department website. I know the communications team is making sure to put it on the scroll at the bottom. Again, on the county website to be able to make appointments for those things. There are still not walk-ups available at the county center, and we continue to do that partnership. We also expanded into the pediatric satellite vaccination locations, and those are happening around the county in different communities, specifically targeted in communities where the individuals might not have the availability to get to somewhere else for a vaccination. So the vaccination satellite locations are remote. Today, Valentine's Day, first and second doses, boosters in Portchester, from 3:30 to 6:30 today. Tomorrow, first, second, and boosters at the Peekskill Family Resource Center. That's from 3 to 6:30. And then on Wednesday at the Sleepy Hollow Middle School, first, second, and doses and boosters. And again, remember, these are pediatric vaccination clinics. Those are locally worked with their school districts. The Peekskill Family Resource Center is a health care clinic. You need to communicate and contact those individuals to see if you're able to participate in those facilities as well. We're going to continue those vaccinations different times at the county center. Again, make those appointments on the Department of Health website. You'll be able to look at those there. And we want to remind people that next week is President's Week, so many of our schools are on their midwinter recess. Therefore, we are not having any satellite vaccination, pediatric satellite locations next week in the schools. However, we are going to have one on Tuesday the 22nd at the Hope Community Services Gym here in White Plains. Again, Hope Community Services, communicate directly with them, and that's from 2 to 6:30. First, second doses, and boosters. The following week, we'll get that to those later on. Again, the County Center Pediatric clinics will continue on Thursdays and Fridays, and please make your appointments there. We just want to wrap up with this last point about masks, as the county executive pointed out. No mask shaming out there. If somebody's wearing a mask, they're wearing it for a reason. Maybe it's because they feel comfortable. Maybe they're immunocompromised. Maybe they have a child that's under 5 years old and they don't have that opportunity to be able to have a vaccination for them. So instead of asking someone, because when we had the mask mandate lifted here today, someone asked someone in the elevator, why are you wearing a mask? You don't need to wear one. You know what? Feel comfortable, make a fashion statement, wear your mask because you feel comfortable in doing that. Thanks a lot, George.
Thank you very much, Ken. We're going to touch on a couple of other issues before we take press questions and then go from there. I want to make sure that I announce that we're continuing our series of capital projects, trying to fix a series of things that need fixing all across Westchester County. We've made much of the improvements on the North County Trailway, on the Miller House reconstruction that's now a couple of years old, even older than that, the Spring Ridge pools. These are things that we've talked about, sort of repeatedly. But there's an ongoing list of improvements that are underway. At some point, we'll talk about the investments we've made at Playland, which if you want to drive down through the parking lot, the season hasn't opened yet down there, you'll see a tremendous amount of reconstruction going on, things that could have been dealt with over the last 20 years that we're addressing at this stage of the game to protect that asset. Today, I just want to mention a significant project, a $6.6 million project to rehabilitate and improve a portion of the Yonkers wastewater treatment plant. It's underway. That wastewater treatment plant is by far the largest of our various plants. And of course, wastewater treatment, in the vernacular, sewage treatment, serves not just the city of Yonkers, but a corridor of communities that sort of trace the Sawmill River. So it goes much further north than you might think. And the pipe structure brings that sewage down to Yonkers to this massive facility right in the Ludlow section of Yonkers. It has been an unwelcomed neighbor at times. We are dealing with odor issues at that location, and we need a significant amount of money to improve them. We've done a certain amount there. We need to do more. But this particular project, it's not the only project we have down there, but this particular project involves some important reconstruction. The bulkhead is a steel sheeting wall that separates the plant from the Hudson River. And it's right on the Hudson River, as all of our sewer treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, are on bodies of water, because the treated effluent, the sewage that comes in, is treated at levels of chemical, biological improvement so that it can then be discarded through waterways, the Hudson River and the Long Island Sound. And the water that comes out as an effluent is appropriate to be able to be discharged. It has been treated, and most of the, if not all of the things that make it a poisonous brew are taken out of the system and dealt with appropriately. However, this bulkhead is an important protection for the sewer treatment plant from the Hudson River and the rising waters of the Hudson River. Whenever we have a major storm, whether it's a superstorm Sandy or some type of incident where there's wind and a higher level of river, if the river overflows into the sewer treatment plant, it can disable the sewer treatment plant. It can cause damage that would take months to repair, millions of dollars of repair, and it would also stop the process of sewer treatment, which would be an impossible situation for the residents who dispose of their waste through their normal processes. When you wash in the shower, when you have things drained down your kitchen sink, when you use the commode, whatever those waste products are, when they leave your property, they go by way of this system to a sewer treatment plant, and in this case, the sewer treatment plant that borders on the Hudson and is vulnerable to actions and activities that happen out in the river. So that's what we're doing here. There's a host of different things, installation of tension rods and anchors steel plates, the prepping and the coating of steel surfaces, there's concrete repair that's needed, and there's backfilling of eroded areas. And as you know, even without a deep construction background, you or I, everything corrodes over time and needs to be replaced and improved. Many of these improvements have been long overdue, but we are tackling them in this project. So it's important to understand that we recognize that the infrastructure is not just a trendy word, a 21st century word. Infrastructure involves specific physical improvements that are necessary in order for us to provide basic services that we provide on an ongoing basis. This is not the expansion of a service. This is to make sure that you have proper sewer treatment, which is an absolutely necessity in life in order to have public health, in order to function in a home life, or for that matter, in a business setting. And this improvement project is essential. This is not the final word of what we need to do with that sewer treatment plant. Our friends who live in the Ludlow neighborhood, Yonkers elected officials, all understand that this plant has to be the source of much upgrade and much improvement, but this project does that, and this is part of our action plan in the capital budget. So I want to highlight for that. We've had a chance to highlight some of the other capital projects with each of these different updates, and we'll continue to do that in the weeks to come. The next major issue that I want to close on is the issue of affordable housing. And I want to take us back a little bit and then take us forward to where we are today. For many years, we've seen a tremendous demand to live in Westchester County. We are proximate to New York City. I've often told the line that my father said why he moved from Brooklyn to Westchester County is that it was near New York City, but it was not New York City. Westchester County is a safe and beautiful area. It has a river and the Long Island Sound and interior reservoirs that serve as lakes. We have high-functioning school districts. We have safe streets. It is a desirable place to live. And for those who make their commerce in New York City in any one of a number of different fields, the proximity of Westchester, the easy commute into the city where we have 3 train lines and a host of others, some express buses that take you in, makes it very desirable. The more demand for Westchester housing, the higher the prices go, and the availability becomes less. And I think we understand that that's one of the basic rules of the marketplace. If you have high demand and you don't have sufficient supply, then that demand chases what supply there is, drives the cost of it up. And we have that in single-family houses, and we have that in apartment settings. So for those of us who understand that the role of government is to address issues, not ignore issues, it has been our philosophy during our years as county legislators, in the time when Ken was chair of the Board of Legislators, and the time that I was chair of the Board of Legislators, that we have to address the affordability issue of housing in Westchester County. And in general, affordability means looking at the rental side, which is the low end economically of the marketplace. If you have certain resources, then you can buy a single family home. But if you don't have enough resources to live in an apartment, then you can't live here at all. And there are certain positions for which we need to have residential population nearby, whether it's our teachers, our nurses, our first responders, and so forth at that basic level. And then also because it is the right way to grow our economy, that we have a diverse residential population so that our economy can grow across the board and not just for the very wealthy and to some degree for the very poor. So as a matter of public policy, we believe that the county has a role in incentivizing affordable housing. That has not been the philosophy prior to our administration. We had a prior administration that did not philosophically believe that the county had a role to play in affordable housing, pushed back against federal efforts to create that, argued about the specifics. There was an argument to be made, I suppose, but the bottom line is it became a matter of a lawsuit rather than a matter of dialogue and compromise. And we believe that it begins with dialogue and compromise long before it goes into the courts. Now, there are people who live in the most urbanized parts of our region, primarily in New York City, that believe that suburbs, because we structure land use differently, are intrinsically exclusive and in some cases intrinsically racist. And we reject that line of thinking. I know growing up in a primarily African-American section of Westchester County that it is a problem of affordability, financial affordability, that drives these things. But each community has a different footprint and a different look to them. The degree of density that works in community A is not the same in Community B, and it's the voters of Community A and Community B that make those determinations. We know, for example, that there's a great degree of transit-oriented development that's going on around the commuter train stations outside of New York City. I can't speak for northern New Jersey or Long Island, but I can speak for Westchester County. You've seen transit-oriented development in New Rochelle to a very dramatic degree. You've seen it to a significant degree in White Plains, to a significant degree in Yonkers. There are pockets of transit-oriented development that have grown up in Pelham, in Tarrytown, in Mamaroneck. So in village settings as well as urbanized city settings, you've had that transit-oriented development where people feel that if they can walk to a train, be on a train that takes them into the city 30 minutes, 45 minutes, it's really no different than living in an outer borough or in a section of Manhattan or the Bronx and commuting into the heart of Midtown Manhattan. And in fact, we made much of the fact that in the coming years, we'll begin to have transit not only into Grand Central Station, but into Penn Station from Westchester County. And it'll start with one of our train lines. We hope it'll expand over the years. So all of that represents a commitment on our behalf. And our commitment to affordable housing is real and it's substantial. Over the last 3 budgets, we have allocated $140 million for land acquisition and for infrastructure improvements that would aid the process of affordable housing being built in Westchester County. Right now, we're working on, in round numbers, about 2,500 units of affordable housing in various stages of support. We do not have an agency that develops the housing directly. In other words, we do not have a county housing authority that develops and then rents out the units. What we do, using the capital I've just described and a host of other resources at our fingertips, help make a developer or municipality, if they see fit, have the access to be able to develop additional affordable housing units. In addition to what we allocate directly in the budget for our land acquisition and for infrastructure, we also have, through our Industrial Development Agency, the ability to incentivize a variety of developments, some of which include affordable housing. And we debate about how much affordable housing should be in a project of a certain size and scope. Those are debatable issues. They're case-by-case, site-by-site issues as to how much affordable housing can be warranted. And we've certainly made an effort to do that over the last 4+ years of this administration, and we have tangible results to point to. We have used this format to show the ribbon cutting at Mayfair Apartments in the town of Greenburgh, where we put on, in round numbers, 75 units of affordable housing outside the gates of the Westchester Community College campus in the Mayfair Knollwood section of Greenburgh. We cut the ribbon on a 34-unit senior project, Saw Pit Seniors, on South Regent Street in the village of Portchester, which was done with county financial assistance. We were part of a major effort that West Tab did in developing a housing complex along with a facility adjacent to it for recreational purposes in the heart of Yonkers. And we had that ribbon cutting as well as part of our efforts. And right now, we're working on projects that go to a wide variety of communities at a wide variety of stages. Not every community has met what would be expected in terms of energy and activity toward affordable housing. The majority of them have. Even upscale communities, the Larchmont Villages and the Rise Cities of the world, have embraced bringing a certain amount of units online. We've seen units in North Castle, 10-unit townhouse unit. We've seen them in Somers and some other places, and we can do better, and we have to do better. So we are strongly behind the issue of affordable housing. And I say that because there are voices who will state opposition to something, but they were never in favor of affordable housing in the first place. So opposition, when it comes from that platform, is suspect in my mind. You have to show that you're committed to affordable housing in order to be able to be a critic of certain strategies. I am personally, and we as an administration, are uncomfortable with a recent set of discussions that have occurred on 2 different issues. On the issue of transit-oriented development, or TODs, there's always an acronym in this governmental world of ours, and the other are ADUs, accessory dwelling units. An accessory unit, sort of the classic example of it is a person has a sort of ranch house, and a portion of the ranch house, maybe including the garage, can be turned into a separate housing unit that can be rented out. Senior citizen, somebody else who needs to have affordable housing but can't afford their own single house, and it fits into this residential setting. That's sort of a classic ADU setting. Transit-oriented development, as I've just described, is development that is in close proximity to our commuter rail, where people can walk, reasonably so, and then go into the city. There's proposals in the proposed state budget, as the governor has proposed it, that include provisions on ADUs and TODs that we think, I personally think, is the wrong direction to go. I have great respect for the governor. I have great respect for the senators who are advocating some of these bills. I think, however, that the proper direction, the proper strategy in advancing affordable housing is not when state decision makers talk about how they're going to use state policy to do these things, state policy which may override local zoning. That it should be a dialogue between state officials, and they have the authority to do these things, but a dialogue with local officials that have a proven commitment to affordable housing so that we can look at what are the strategies that will help us advance affordable housing, and not a one-off here and a one-off there that may have some minimal benefit, but could, as part of their process, engender opposition in principle. Because one of the things about local government in all suburbs, and for that matter in upstate New York, we differ from New York City. New York City is a monolithic, singular government in an urban setting. We have smaller communities that are incorporated, and one of the important tasks that they have is that of land use regulation. It is the local villages and the cities and the towns that decide what should the zoning be, what should the site plan approval be through the planning board. Many of them have architectural review boards. Many of them have traffic and pedestrian committees that look at projects, even down to the single building of a home and a driveway, to determine whether or not this construction that's before them as a proposal before the planning board of the community has impacts that we need to consider. And as we look at what those impacts are, they're not insignificant impacts. We have to look at the environmental impact of any development anywhere that we're dealing with an eye to, does it make certain things worse? What is the runoff from the property if we decide to develop on this property and pave a driveway and so forth? What are the impacts to sewage capacity? The sewers that reach our 7 wastewater treatment plants and some of the other smaller wastewater treatment plants have defined capacity. And before we start to agree to do 25 units here, 25 units there, we have to know what is that capacity and does it fit? We also have to know what is the basis of our fire and police service. You could, in theory, depending on how much you want to develop, you could develop to the point, but potentially by going vertically, beyond what your local fire department can effectively fight in terms of a fire. You might determine that it is wise to have more units available, but how large of scope is your police department and how large is your school district to be able to handle the young people that will come and live in these places with their parents and then need education. And these are thorny, difficult issues that are defined community by community by community. That's very different. For those who look at the suburbs and they make the presumption of racism or exclusion, they're not living in the suburbs. They're not looking at the decisions that get made on the zoning board of Community A, the planning board of Community B, the architecture review board in Community C. They're not looking at the environmental plans that get developed around these things. They're making a broad-based decision saying we need to have more housing units in the suburbs, period, to spread out the concentration and the pressure on housing in the big city. We can develop strategies if we do them cooperatively. Just as we talked about mandates on masks, and I've avoided doing mandates, I know some people have been critical of me for avoiding mandates. Some, may be happy or don't even realize that I haven't put a mandate in, and so they don't really know. But for those generally who oppose your policy, they're pretty conversant on it. And I think in this particular case, I'm looking at 2 particular provisions in the governor's proposed budget, which I urge be taken out of the budget. They should not be part of what gets adopted in the budget and has force of law. I served in the state legislature. I know how the process works. The Assembly will do a budget, the Senate will do a budget, and then the 3 people in the room will harmonize between the governor's proposals, the Assembly counter-proposal, and the Senate counter-proposal. It is my judgment, the judgment of this administration, that the ADU and the TOD proposals should not be dealt with in this budget. They should be pulled out, and there should be a dialogue. And I would argue that that dialogue should include all of those local officials, not just in Westchester, but on the island and any place else affected by it, that are committed to affordable housing, that have proven they're committed to affordable housing, so that we can work on strategies that we think can work and be effective, not theoretically what advocates might think can work, or for that matter, what opponents of affordable housing would like to do as a leverage to reduce affordable housing and commitment to affordable housing. So we have that sort of two-sided threat from those in neither case that want to sit and work out a cooperative plan. We think that is the right plan. I have a good working relationship with this governor. I have great respect for her. We can disagree on public policy. I have great respect for the senators that have sponsored or co-sponsored some of these bills. We agree on the vast majority of public policy issues. On this particular policy issue, I think it's unwise for us to legislate ADUs and TODs until we have a better understanding of how they fit into an overall strategy for affordable housing. Before we did anything on affordable housing, we did an exhaustive report on the need for affordable housing. It took us over a year to complete that report. It is a valuable document. Anyone can read it if you want to take a weekend and take your time to read it. And you'll see the analysis that went into assessing where we were in Westchester. Well, in the prior administration, they didn't want to do that at all because they knew what the report would show. The report would show a need for affordable housing, and they didn't want to deal with it at all. So the criticism that I hear from individuals, those who are running for public office now, who want to be critical of a policy because there's the natural conflict in a campaign, I don't think that's a credible criticism. The credible criticism comes from those of us who are committed to affordable housing. We believe in it, we're working to do it, and we know that we need a strategy that does not override local zoning, but works in harmony with local officials. That, we think, is the practical, prudent, affordable housing strategy, and I can defend that on a podium with anybody relative to the policies that we face. Let me just close our press conference with one final point. This is not the substantive point, just to really sort of tease it out for what's coming up. We expect to address the issue of crime, violent crime, and what its presence is in Westchester County. You might have heard from any number of sources, crime is out of control. And what happens is people see an incident, a heinous incident, and when they see the incident for themselves, they see how frightening an act of crime is. And some people who are trying to make a political point will want you to believe that this is now representative of what's happening all over, all the time, every time. And it's just simply not accurate. We've asked for a report, and we have it, possession of it, to analyze where we were in 2021 through the end of the third quarter. We don't have fourth quarter statistics quite yet, and analyze it over the same period of time in 2017. 4 years is a reasonable amount of time to analyze, to show trends. It's also reasonable because some of the policies from the state that are being criticized did not exist in 2017, and they do exist now. And we look forward to coming back here to give you a more full report on that. We will have a video that will be circulated, statistics that will be circulated. The ability to address crime is not about rhetoric, and it's not about policies necessarily. It's about the way we have effective police work, law enforcement work that is that works in advance of a crime occurring, and then when a crime occurs, that does the pursuit necessary to bring someone to justice, arresting them and having them prosecuted. We live in a society in which innocence is assumed until guilt is proven. And when we break that wall, we open the door up for people to be rounded up because somebody doesn't want them out in the general public. And there doesn't have to be proving anything. We just don't want you to talk. We just don't want you to be around. We have to stand by the law of innocent until proven guilty. And then, when proven guilty, that they take a certain turn, and that there is a punishment meted proportionate to their crime. And there are crimes across a long range of behaviors. There's violent crime, there's crime that takes another life, there's crime that is a conspiracy to commit a crime. That is a malice aforethought that has a certain greater weight in terms of assessing criminality than, someone who commits the crime of shoplifting and picks up something and runs out of a store with no intent to pay for it. Crime is crime, but there are different levels of it. So we intend to come and show you what the statistics are, and you know yourself what the anecdotes are. You see a video, it might make you afraid, but I can tell you this is a safe county. And I travel it as much as anybody does. And I'm in different corners of this county at various times of the day and night. Ken is no different than I am. I grew up in a tough neighborhood in this county, and I may live, in another part of the county now, but I'm in every corner of this county, and this is fundamentally a safe county, and we're going to prove it to you both with statistics and anecdotal experience, and also with the testimony of the various police individuals, and also community leaders, people who are in the community who are dealing every day with the incidents of behavior and crime. That's coming. We'll have a press conference devoted specifically to that topic. What I encourage you to do, and this is a very difficult time for us, I think we're seeing, certainly a society that's divided by ideology, and almost every issue is thrown into that ideological divide. I would never have thought that a pandemic would wind up being in the middle of an ideological divide where some people are anti-mask and some people are seen as pro-mask because of their political affiliation. But we are where we are. I certainly, as a county executive, can't change any of that dialogue. The dialogue is what it is. But what I just ask you to do is use the same sense of logic and proportion that I believe you use in your personal life when you make decisions. When you're raising your child, you make decisions every day about how to give them direction, how to put them on the right path. At some point in time, they'll be out of your control, they'll be adults on their own, and then their behavior will be shaped by what they learn as a young person. But it will no longer be something that you can directly control. And how you give them the right set of values and internalize it so that they go forward without mom or dad telling them what to do, that they know what intrinsically the right thing to do is not. And as every parent has to grasp, how do you correct your child when they've done something wrong? To what degree do you punish them? That's a judgment call. You make that call every day. You don't make it on ideology. You make it on practicality. You know your child, you know the nature of the action, and you try to make the right decision. We're both fathers. I'm now a grandfather, and it is an art. It's not a science as to how to be a good parent. But you rely on facts and you make judgments. That's all I ask you to do in the public arena. There are voices out there that want to lead you in one direction or the other. Listen to all voices, but make those judgments yourself. Make them based on what you know is sound, intelligent action. We try to do that. The things we do in the public domain are certainly open to interpretation, to disagreement. It is a free society, and I accept that. I actually welcome that. I think that what I see around the globe in tyranny leads you to situations that we see in other parts of the world right now, where one country is ready to subjugate another country, just because they have the desire to control. They have the desire to exert absolute power. I don't look for that power here. I look for us to accomplish things. And if we can do that, and we can do that with you, in a partnership with government, with not-for-profit organizations, with the educational group, with community organizations, that's the best of all possible worlds. Because when we do that, then we're validating the American experiment. We're validating what was envisioned by the Founding Fathers, what was protected during the days of Abraham Lincoln through the Civil War, what was protected during the days of Franklin Roosevelt through the Depression and World War II, and now it is our challenge to protect it in the next generation. We protect it in the county government by providing safe streets. We provide it in the county government by treating your sewage. We provide it by dealing with the pandemic as intelligently as we can, by trying to provide affordable housing and running a bus system and all those different things that seem very mundane, but are very much a part of everyday life. So I appreciate you sharing those thoughts with you. I want to check to see if we have any questions from the press. Lisa Reyes, our communications manager, tells me no. So we'll invite any member of the press that sees us on a feed. You're welcome to give us a call. 995-2900 is the general number here. You can speak to Catherine Chaffee or Lisa Reyes, Carolyn Fortino, Joe Scamato. Any of our fine people will be happy to help you. If there's any press questions, we'll be happy to follow up on it. In any event, we thank you for your time. We appreciate being able to share this with you. We have not yet established the firm time, but I presume that on Tuesday of next week, a week from tomorrow, which will be the 22nd of the month, we will probably do the next update. We'll make an announcement, but right now, tentatively, if you're a junkie and want to see this every week, I'm not sure that many people do, but we'll look at Tuesday the 22nd at 2 o'clock is the next time we'll update it, and we'll have another municipal partner in, and we'll try to cover some issues. We'll always cover COVID, but we'll cover the issues that we think are important besides COVID so that you see the scope of what we're doing in Westchester County government. I'm George Latimer with Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe.